fellowship program that's dedicated to providing space in independent developers so they can work together and share their ideas together and have their own community. So, without further ado, here is Rich Breland to walk us through his inspirations through January, his own procedurally generated music app. Again, I apologize for the wait. Microsoft does acknowledge that they are kind of a little behind on technology and they're moving to a new space in January. So it's going to be in Times Square, so look out for it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming out. Okay, so let's see. So my talk is called Psalms in a Snow Globe, a deep dive into procedurally generated music. And the talk is about this tool that I made. It's called January. It's an interactive music tool. It started as a game and it sort of shifted into a more music-focused thing. And I will definitely talk about that a bit. I think for starters, I'm just going to dive in to the game and just play it for just a little bit, so you can kind of get a feel for what it's like, and then I will expand on it. Okay, I think that's a pretty good primer just to kind of get started. So you control a little guy, you walk around, you lick snowflakes, and cool musical things happen. And that was kind of the idea. But giving the player a chance to kind of get pretty deep into it and explore music. Maybe even if you're someone who doesn't have music background. That was the hope, at least. Okay, so my background, I grew up in Staten Island, right over the bridge. I grew up playing games and music. I grew up playing games and music since I was little and started taking guitar in high school. And at some point, I went off to music school and got into this stuff, got into synthesis and patching cables together and coming up with cool sounds. And all the while I was writing music under the moniker Disaster Piece, and got into writing game soundtracks. And I'm interested in games and music and their intersection, which is kind of how January came about. Oh. I did this wrong. So January's origins. I had limited programming experience before I worked on January. I took a C++ class in high school. Took a Flash programming class like 9 years ago. And messed around occasionally, very, very occasionally. But in 2000, computer. In 2009, I went to a talk at GDC. It was a Cannibal talk, which, if you're not familiar, is a really cool, really simple game. It's a runner game that Adam Saltzman made. And at the talk, he actually talked about the game and the development of the game, and he used this library he created called Flixel. He used it to make the game, and during the talk was about a half hour long, he actually made a game prototype while the talk was being given. So it took, in about 20 minutes, he had a game up and running, and I was just kind of blown away by that. And thought, wow, I'd like to maybe mess with that and see what I could do. So it's a really robust library for making games, especially for somebody who's coming at it from a kind of beginnerish standpoint, like I was. So I guess meanwhile, ideas are brewing after GDC, and I was sketching out some game concepts, and this was one of them. Snow Tongue, a forgotten pleasure. Really,
I'd buy it.
Should have kept that, right? That'd be good. And an idea where you just kind of walked around and licked snowflakes. It's a moving landscape. It's a suburb. And there's this thing at the bottom here that says, catch one snowflake, then another, and the parameters separating the two dictates notes, angle, and distance. And that turned out to be totally ridiculous, and I didn't know how to do that. But growing up, I was always kind of enamored with snow. There's this animated film from the 80s called The Snowman, which I absolutely love. It's a British film from the early 80s. I used to watch it all the time. And it kind of had this, I don't know, I just really liked being in the snow. So that's kind of the background. This is a video, but it's not going to work. So the origins, let's see. Yeah, so I found a Flixel shooter tutorial online. I was looking at tutorials for Flixel online, and I was trying to find one that I thought I could get into and start to get my hands dirty. And I found a shooter tutorial that seemed doable, and I started messing with it. And I was like, hey, I have that idea. I have that Snow Tongue idea thing. So I was like, I think I can repurpose this into a snow licking game. So what if you rotate it and you turn the spaceship into a little dude and the ships into snowflakes and get rid of the bullets. And yeah, it turns out the basic mechanics are the same. Planets aligned. It was just a case of the right tools at the right time. The right idea, just all kind of coming together. And working off that pre-existing code made it a lot easier for me to kind of get into it and to start messing with it. And to sort of have a chance to look at the logic while it was simple and be like, okay, I understand what's going on because there's not a lot here, and I see how when I change things, it reacts when I build the game. Okay, so version 1, which I did in 2009. I sort of, right after that tutorial, I just kind of dived right in and I spent 2 weeks just non-stop working on January. And it started as more of an art game, and I had all these ambitious plans to kind of flesh it out, all its narrative and stuff. And that never happened, but I will show you that so that I can show you the difference. It's going to be a little bit of sound overlap here because I don't want we have to reload these. Extra windy. I should be good at this. If you're getting restless, it's almost over. So it pretty much starts over. You go through the house, and it starts all over again. Sort of. Yeah, there it goes. Okay. So yeah, originally, it was more of an art experience. That was what I was going for, kind of a more immersive type thing. Where the pacing is kind of slow and you kind of get sucked into it, and it gets darker, and the poetry and everything, and that was kind of one approach. But when I revisited it. Let's see. When I revisited it, it seemed like not the right direction because of all the musicality that I wanted to embed in the experience, and I wanted to give the player options for how they could actually interact with it. In this form, it's kind of you just kind of play with it, and you don't have a lot of control. So I wanted to give the player more control. Before I get into that, I want to talk about how a note is played in the first version. Start getting into the mechanics. So this is a general flow of how a note is played in the first version, and it never gets much more complicated than this.
Can we full screen that? Is it possible?
Yeah. I might have to full screen it every time I switch.
Oh, really? Okay. Don't worry about it.
I think if you click on tools in the top right,
Tools.
Oh, that's better.
that helps a little bit.
Okay.
What's that? There's an icon next to the tool that looks kind of like a full screen icon.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Who knows?
There's 2 arrows I hate you. Wow, I guess there's no real full screen. Just like incrementally getting bigger. Okay. So step 1, the player licks a snowflake. Step 2, the program determines what kind of snowflake type we just licked. Because I don't know if you noticed, but there are certain snowflakes that do different things. Towards the end, there were those waffle-shaped ones that would play chords, and then there were these other ones that were kind of like little circles, little hollow rings, and those would change the wind, which was an early feature that I was screwing around with. So you determine the snowflake type, and in most cases where it's just playing a single note, you choose a note value, and that note value is based on the previous note that was chosen. Then the note is played, and after the note is played, the program will store the note value that was chosen to be played, and then you create this cycle where the program always has the last note that was performed in memory, and it uses that to make decisions about, okay, where's this music going, and that's pretty much that, and it doesn't get a whole lot more complicated in the first version. So this is actually, let's see. This is from an article I wrote for Game Developer, which never got published, but it's on Kama Sutra, and it's a simplification of how the logic works in the first game. And the idea is that, let's see if I can use my mouse here. The idea is that in a very simple sort of scale type system, wow, I need to switch the sound here. So in a scale type system, in the first game, there's a limited series of notes that the game can play. So you take into account all of those choices, and then it was just a simple if statement. If the last note played was C3, if it was this, then play one of these notes, play D3 or E3 or F3, etc. And then if the previous note was D3, play this note or this note or this note, and so forth. So it was just a matter, with this, it was really just a matter of kind of creating a semi-random system that also could be musical by giving the game choices that sound good. So if the previous note was, let's see, I mean if I just follow this logic, if you have, given that this is the key of C major, which would just be like the octave notes, C's, and the G, which is the fifth, those are kind of the strongest notes. Those have the most options for where to go, but the notes in between have less options, which gives it keeps it grounded. So if you're in this key and then you go here, like you're and then you go here, you only have three choices. You can either go there, or you can go. You can either go here, or you can go, and so forth. Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm getting a little like. Look, there's so many screens. So just a little primer in case you're not familiar. Back here, I was, there's all these letter type, C3, D3, E3, and on a keyboard, you have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and then you have the black keys, which are sharps or flats. And then as you move up the keyboard, you give it a number for that octave range. So that's how that works. So in version 1, I came up with this scale, a hexatonic scale. So normally, most music will use a 7-note scale, like the C major scale would be, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the octave, which is the first note, again, an octave higher. But I decided to use this scale. By taking out one of the notes, it's ambiguous, and the player can interpret the harmony of the music in a couple of different ways. So this scale, let's see, it's G, A, B, D sharp, G, A, B, D, E, it's this. So depending on where you start, it's just something I was messing with, and I wanted to come up with a scale that would always sound good, and it would be easy to move through, and you wouldn't have to worry about some of the notes, in between that are don't sound as good. Let's see if I can explain this. I don't think so. So it was semi-successful.
Well, you're wanting kind of a meditative. That's the approach, right? As opposed to like a dissonant, something that could make really weird, like the tritone is like a weird. Dun, dun,
yeah.
That kind of sound.
Is I intentionally tried to take out some of the tension notes, like in C major. You have that note, which is the fourth. So I basically did it's basically a major scale without a fourth note. So the idea there was to kind of simplify it and make it more ambiguous and hopefully more harmonious. And it was semi-successful. I think it has its moments.
And did you have any key changes? Any key change opportunities in version
Not in
1?
version
No, version 1 has no key changes.
So was it all in C major or G major?
No, it was just the scale. And
So is G major no fourth?
yeah, G major with no fourth, which sometimes would sound like G major, and other times it would sound like B, or
Mhm.
it would sound like a different scale.
Hmm.
And part of that too was, if I go back to this slide, just imagine this series of if statements. Right now, it's just showing you a single octave of notes, C3 through C4. But in version 1, I think there are 18 or 21 different notes. So for each octave of notes, I could have different logic, different paths that the music could take. So if you're down low, it might be more conservative about which notes you go to, so that the bottom end of the music is more strong.
Mhm.
Whereas if you're up higher, it might be more liberal with the choices that the game would make, so that it's more interesting. Yeah. So version 2, so in 2012, I decided I was going to enter IGF and try to submit January to the Independent Games Festival. And that gave me a good excuse to kind of bring it back and work on it, because I spent about 2 weeks on it in 2009, and then I kind of didn't do anything with it. So I started doing all this stuff. I started doing all these experiments with presentation and mechanics. I implemented full screen and did things with the notes lighting up at night, and it kind of still had the poem, but after the poem would end, you kind of have some opportunities to mess around with the mechanics. I had this secret system where at the end, when you go through the door of the house and you come out and you lick a snowflake, it would give you a secret. And there were I think 20 secrets, which were they were riddles that were meant to be mechanics. So in this one, this secret was just talking about one of the systems, which was which I will explain in a bit, the write repeat mode, where you write a series of notes, and then it captures them and then it repeats them, which I'll talk about more in a little bit. And I imported MIDI. I added a MIDI feature too, so you could save what you did as MIDI, and I thought that was a good thing to do. But it was version 2 was kind of in between worlds. I was trying to make it kind of this artsy thing with all the presentation, but I was also trying to make it more of a tool, adding the HUD with all the musical information, like volume and panning and the note type and the mode and the chord, but also kind of still holding on to that original idea. And I decided to let go of that. I think now would be a good time to try to explain modes really quick. So one of the things that I added in version 2 is modes, and modes really opened up the possibilities for January. And so if I can explain modes, let's see. So in a C major scale, you have C through B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And if you start at C, if you're in this, you go start. That's what everyone knows as a C major scale. And that's also the first mode of the C major scale. So what modes are, if you look here and you see how you have 1 through 7, and each one is shifted over by one note. So if you start the C major scale from a different note in that scale, it's a different scale because of the distance between those notes. So there are actually 7 different scales that you can come up with by using the same exact notes in C major.
Question?
Can you repeat that again? I kind of missed that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually let me do a little demonstration here. So if you're in C major, then you have, and then the next mode up is Dorian. So that's if you shift. I should probably do this. I was
Yeah, do that.
gonna have the keyboard with me here, but so if you have if you start from the beginning, from the first, it's Ionian, which is C to C here. If you start from here, from D, you have a different scale, and it's minor, so this is called Dorian. And it goes up. Each degree is a different scale. And so a lot of songs will actually use this. When you hear a typical song like each one of those is actually using a different scale. So if you have like this would be Ionian, you'd be then you go down here. And the reason that sounds different is because it's a different mode. I know that it's kind of a hard thing to explain in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It took me like 4 years to figure it out.
I have he was explaining it to me a lot recently and I'm a musician, I should know it. So one thing I think that's not necessarily clear from what you've said is that when you're playing C major scale, you're not playing all the notes in between. If you just want to play all the notes, maybe, Rich, between like da 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 da, you're skipping a bunch of notes in between. There's 12 notes on a keyboard, right?
Yeah.
So a scale, you're only using 7 of those notes. And
Right.
so the relationship in between the notes, depending on what note of the scale that you're starting on,
Is different.
is
It
different.
has a
Even though
different
you're
sound.
using the same set of 7 notes within those 12 notes possible. Yeah.
Right. So
don't know
the
if that
idea
helps.
was that for January, I wanted the player to be able to move through different chords and use the different modes so that it sounds like you're moving through a piece of music. I don't know if you still have do you still have a question or?
Oh, no.
Okay, cool. You can definitely ask me at the end
I'll
too,
look
because I know it's kind of a hard thing to explain. So yeah, in the original, the entire experience was a single scale. For multiple scales and modes, I had to come up with a new system. So I came up with this modular system where the idea is the same, but instead of using notes, the program actually uses intervals. So in January, in the first version of January, every note that you hear in the game, the code would call directly. Like if the last note played was C3.wave, for instance, then play D3.wave. But in this system, I created a layer of abstraction, which allows me to take ideas about how the scales move forward and shift them into different keys and to separate them into different modes. So, do you guys know what intervals are? Probably not all of you. It took me a while to figure out. Intervals are the distance between notes. So that's the abstraction that's going on. And before it was just, okay, I'm going to play C3.wave. Right? Now it's, you might not be in C. You might be in this. You might be in D Dorian. And before you wanted to play the first note of that scale, and that would just be, D3. Now in the code, it's, I made it so that you're talking about the intervals. So in the key of C major, in C Ionian, which is the first mode, which is, the first note, C3 is the first. It's the first interval in the scale, and then the second, and then the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh, and so forth. So it was a matter of changing up the code so that it was more modular.
How long did it take you to figure out that solution?
It was kind of tricky. I could go on. I had to come up with a way to take the array of notes that the program was using and shift it around. So I had to have multiple levels. Like I had to have the current the current scale that the game was using, and then a global scale that was like all the notes, and then say, okay, take what you have and shift it, like one over or two over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, I think I'm gonna jump back and forth a little bit into the game so that I can help to show what I'm talking about.
This is like, it's like why to make it always sound randomly interesting and good.
What's that?
The music science is like around how to, it being random and always sounding interesting and like compelling and good. That was like the challenge, right?
Yeah, I think the trick is that it's not actually random. I mean, there's randomness in it, but it's still operating within a limited set of choices. Like you can only, I'm telling it, you can only play this note or this note or this note. Only the notes that I think will sound good. I'm just going to jump back to this just to kind of reiterate the mode thing because I know it's a little tricky. Let's see. So in the newer version, this was in version 2 as well. Let's see. Let me get rid of that. The way that you would change modes is these let's see, this rotating X-looking flake that I just walked past there. I don't know if you guys saw it. It's kind of hard to point out. This one right here that I'm about to lick. So when you lick that one, it would actually change the chord and change the mode at the same time. So if you're in the key of C and the flake is going to play, let's see, an F chord, and you see up there in the top left, it's changing. It would change not only the note that it played, but it also would change the scale moving forward.
Having it play a full chord was a nice touch because I think it really enforces that you've entered a new mode as opposed to just like playing the root
that
or
would
something.
be even more complicated.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, so right, you know, I'm going to jump ahead and come back to this because we were just talking about chords. Well, maybe not. Yeah, okay, I will. So in version 3, yeah, so version 3 is when I sort of took what was in version 2 and you know, I decided that I was going to take out all the narrative stuff and all the story stuff and really focus on the mechanics and making it this music tool. So one of the things I did is I got rid of the scrolling. I made the game narrower than it was before and gave the character wraparound so that it was a lot easier to kind of get to notes and kind of interact with the tool and do things that were musical and interesting. You know, I took out the day to night cycle. I took out the poem, all of that stuff. And I added a bunch of mechanics. I added things that let you let the program autopilot and kind of improvise on its own. I added pentatonic scales, if you guys like blues or rock solos and stuff, that kind of thing. Music notes would sound different depending on which way you're facing. And one of the things I did too is I revealed all the controls up front. In the previous version, there were secrets and you kind of had to like fish for it. Now I just said, here's everything you can do, and go crazy and kind of make the most of it. So I think now's a good time to get into, on the way to talking about the chords, just how that system that I talked about in the first version, where you lick a snowflake, determine what snowflake type it is, then make a choice, play it, store the note value, and then repeat it. In the newer version, that system has been elaborated on to kind of take account for all the things you can do for changing chords, changing keys, all that kind of stuff. So in the new one, if you lick a small snowflake, it calls this onLick function. Actually, it will call an onLick function no matter what kind of snowflake you lick. because that's just how I guess object-oriented programming works. So when you lick a snowflake, it calls this onLick function, and for a small snowflake, it will just play this playNote function. And the playNote function is the same. It's pretty much the same as before. It's choose a note value based on the previous note, play the note, and then store the new value. So that's pretty much the same. But every snowflake has different instructions based on what it is meant to do. So if a chord type snowflake is licked, it'll call the chords on the function. But the first thing that it will do is it will move the key to you'll change the scale that you're using to a new scale, and then it will play the note in that new scale using the same method as before, and then it will play the chord using the information that it got from the change of the mode. So it actually plays a chord and it plays a note at the same time. Yep.
Is there randomness in determining what the new mode is as well?
Yeah, the new mode that it chooses is random, completely random, but it's in the key. So the new version has two keys. It has C major and C minor, and then just modes from those two, which just turn out to be, I don't know. It sounds nice, I think. So when the play chord function, when you get to that, the program will choose a chord voicing from a predetermined list of options, and then set up a timer to flam the notes. Do you guys know what flamming is? Flamming is like when so normally, again. Okay, so normally, if you just play a chord like this, they're all happening at the same time. A flam is when you separate them out ever so slowly to kind of give it a nice, dreamy feel, like one after the other, kind of slowly.
Why is it called flam?
I have no idea.
Flam.
It's a drumming thing. So yeah, there's a timer that does that, and then it plays a chord. And I'm sure you're wondering, how the hell does mode change work? I will try to explain that right now. Actually, first though, so the choosing a chord voicing, it works in a similar way as choosing notes. The program for each mode, Ionian, Dorian, etc., which are scales of this, of a major scale, I created different options that it had. So let's see, just to kind of give sound to this gobbledygook. Say we're in C major, and we're in Ionian, which is just do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It's just do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So if I want to play that first one there that says 1, 1, 3, 1, 5, 1, that would be 1, 1, 3, and 5. So that's just a typical C major chord. The next one there is 1, 3, 7. That one is this. It's another kind of chord. Then there's this one, which is 1, 5, 1, 1, 5, 1, 1, 2, which is this, where the 1, 2 is an octave above, and so forth. And we'll just pick one of those and kind of mix things up a little bit. So the basic idea with mode change, with changing the mode, is to randomly choose a new musical mode to shift to use a new scale. And the way that works is there's a function called populate, and it changes the starting point of available notes to match the new mode or the new key. So it's this kind of thing again, where you have this set of notes. Say you have like, say you have like 80 notes, and it's like from C2 to C5 or something like that. Those are all the notes that the game can possibly use. Then you have another set of notes that's smaller. Say it's 7 notes because it's only a single octave of a scale, or maybe it's 2 octaves, something like that. That is the actual, that would be the actual series of notes that the game is using at any one time. And the way this works, it says, okay, let's change what those notes are. Let's shift them. Let's shift them up or shift them down, and so forth. And there's one other kind. There's one other kind of flake. It's called a transpose flake, or a key change flake, and will actually not only change the mode. This is a little more complicated. It not only changes the mode, but it changes the key as well. So it will sound a little unusual, or it can be interesting. It's like a nice color. If I can find one here.
Blizzard.
I just made the snow come down faster, maybe. I think I was already using that though. Come on, man. Give me a snowflake. Okay. Here it is. So what it's actually doing is it's moving between chords that are available in C major and chords that are available in C minor. So an example of that, if you're just playing chords in C major, it kind of sounds like this. But if you change and you go to a chord in C minor, then it might sound like, let's see. And then it might go like here. So it's just a different color, but it's a new key as well. So
Rich,
yeah.
Stuff like tremolo, is that encoded in the WAV file that you're calling through?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's in the sounds in the game there's tremolo, which is when the volume of the music fluctuates. It kind of has a nice little effect, and that's just a part of the recording that the game is calling.
Do you have a piano keyboard there, right there?
Yeah, I've got a little keyboard here, so I can do examples.
Is there like a good piano program that you can use the keyboard like on your PC to mimic the play a piano on the key, like using the keyboard of your laptop to play a piano or something like that? Is there like a famous or popular one like that?
I use Logic Pro, and Logic Pro has a built-in musical typing interface where you can actually use the computer keyboard to play music. I'm sure you could find something like that. Okay, so if you look at this musical snowflake, the transpose snowflake, it will call the transpose snowflakes on lick function. And the first thing that happens again is that the mode.change function. So if you're in the key of C major and you're also in the Ionian mode, then you're in C Ionian. If you do a mode change, it's going to randomly choose a new mode in C major. So it might choose D Dorian, for instance. So say that the mode.change function is run, and it switches to D Dorian. Then on top of that, there's another function that changes the key. So what it does is it toggles the global scale that I was talking about, all the notes that are available, from C major to C minor, or vice versa, depending on which one you're in. So it does that first, and then it calls this intervals.populate function that was in the mode.change. So it actually does it, let's see. Yeah, so it uses this intervals.populate function twice, because the populate function is also in the mode change function. So the first time it runs, it's just changing the mode in that key. The second time it runs, it's changing the key is changing, and then it's getting the new notes.
And does it, when the key change function runs, does it keep the same mode from when it first licked the note? Like, will it pick like Mixolydian and then go from like C Mixolydian to then like, like F Mixolydian or something?
Well, the idea is that by doing it this way, not only will the mode change, the key will also change. So, if, for instance, if this just had a key change function, when you were in C Ionian and which is C major, the root of C major, and you went to C minor, it would just go to what's that word? It would keep the mode the same, and you would switch to you would stay in Ionian, but in a different
Right,
key.
right.
Yeah. So this way, it actually changes not only the mode but the key as well.
And then it plays the chord after it figures out both the mode change, the key change, and then populates the intervals it can play. So it does all that, and then it plays the chord in the new
Right.
key.
That's where this is going. Yeah. So the next thing is, well, actually, there's this other function here. There's this function that I created. It's called fade out dissonance, and this was kind of an interesting thing that I stumbled on. What I noticed was that when you're playing, like say you're in C major and you play a chord, and then you want to go to you want to do a key change and you want to switch. So if I play C major and then I play a chord in C minor like that or something, there's a dissonance there, and they overlap because of the way the game works. Each sound file that plays a tone, if you notice, they bring out for a while. So before, when you'd switch keys, the notes would overlap, and you'd get these intervals that you don't want. Intervals like like I don't know, like that, and like weird stuff. So to fight that, I created this function called fade out dissonance. And what it does is it removes notes that are still sounding, that are no longer a part of the current key. So if you are, say you're in C minor, and you're in the key of C minor, and you're on the mode, what is it? A flat Lydian, which would be. That. And then you're going to switch into C major. These notes are not all going to work in the new key. So if I do these, if I play that, it doesn't really work, right? So the idea was, okay, let's clean this up a little bit and let's make it sound better. So it will fade out those notes when you switch keys. Those notes that don't belong anymore. So once it figures out those notes and says, okay, make sure you don't play, it will go through all of the sounds that are currently playing and figure out which ones are not going to be in this new key, and it's going to tell them to stop playing, so that you don't hear that overlap. It kind of functions like a sustain pedal on a piano. When you're playing and you switch chords, you like to use that sustain pedal, right? Because you want to, I want to prevent this chord from, muddying up the next chord. So I have a nice break. It's the same idea. So it does that, and then it plays the note with the new mode and key, and then it plays the chord with the new mode and key.
Is the fade out? Is it fading out everything or just select?
It only fades out select notes. So it actually goes through all the notes that are currently playing, and it checks them against the notes that are in the current key, and it makes a decision, the determination whether or not they should be there or not. And if they're outside of the key, then it tells them those notes to fade out. But any notes that are still in the key, it keeps them. And what that does, it kind of gives it some glue. So when you're changing keys, you might be moving between two chords that are pretty unrelated to each other. But if there's a note that is in both, like if it's in both, let's see, like if I played, if I play that A flat major chord, which is in C minor, and then I went to C major, I would still play this note. I would keep that one playing because it's in both to make it more musical. Yeah. So some takeaways. I mean, oh, that's right. I forgot to talk about the right repeat mode, which is another can of worms. How am I doing? Am I doing okay? I know this is a little, technical.
They can handle it.
You guys can handle it. Okay, so I want to talk about right repeat mode really quick, and we'll do a little demonstration to help solidify that. Okay, so the way this works is, say you want to repeat a sequence. You can switch between these two modes, right mode, which I was just in, and repeat mode. So now, it will just play those two notes over and over again. That's not very interesting, so maybe I want to start over. Oh.
Really starting.
Really?
Really? Oh no! What did I do?
You can try hitting Control-Shift-T.
Reinstall Windows.
Might help.
Control-Shift-G?
Control-Shift-T.
T?
Try one more. Try again.
No, go to the middle tab and hit forward.
And hit forward?
That's where it was. You hit backspace.
Oh, that's what happened.
Okay. Yay!
Bravo.
Okay, so I'll do something a little more interesting here for try. Do like a 4 note, and then we'll move into repeat. The cool thing about this is that the sequence will come with you when you change, when you move into new keys and new chords, and it will still react with all the different kinds. Like this one here that that one right there, that's a harmony snowflake, so that adds a harmony note. And then these X's, these little X's right here, those are octaves. Now I just changed keys, and I'm still using the same sequence, but the sequence has been transposed to fit into the new key. And if I change chords again, it should still work. Yeah, it will keep things in the right key so that you can kind of play around. And you can even do this. You can do a detour mode, which will let you just kind of go back into the normal mode, and then it will save the sequence. So you can kind of create a little song that has like these sections that are repeated, and then sections that are just freeform.
Wow.
So meditative.
So, right repeat mode, the way right mode works is, if you're in right mode, the player lifts a snowflake, and then that note is added to an array. And if the array this happens every time, and then if the array tries to grow beyond 8 notes, the oldest note is removed to make room for the new note. And you check if right mode is still active. If it's not, then stop. Otherwise, just keep doing it. And then repeat mode, player licks a snowflake, play the next note that's stored in that array. If you get to the end of the array, loop around. So if it's an 8-note sequence, after you play the 8th note, it will play the first note. Check if it's still active. If not, then stop. Pretty straightforward. And then the detour is just, okay, let's save the repeat mode stuff that we have, the sequence, and let's just kind of fool around for a bit, and then if we want to come back, we can. And, okay, cool. So, some takeaways from this. I had sort of some lofty ideas about how people might use this. I thought a lot of people would get into the one of the features which I didn't really talk about, which is MIDI export, where you take all the things you did and you can do cool things with them. You can use them in remixes or however you want. You know, I was hoping that maybe more people would use that.
It does have it?
Mm-hmm.
It does have it?
Yeah, it has MIDI export.
I used it last night, if it makes you feel better.
Yeah, I used it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you did use it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was one of the things that I was really going for. And
Is it the same as record mode that you can record a WAV file and you can listen to what you did later on?
yeah, it's that same kind of thing. It's basically the program is recording what you do from the beginning, and then any time you can pull up this button. I can show you right now. Yeah, you just pull up this button, and then you can save to a MIDI file. Hopefully this works on this computer. Yeah.
Yeah, just you can open it in Reason
Ah.
and set it to a virtual instrument, and then you can move all the notes around like any MIDI
So,
performance.
but the difference between recording like a WAV file and a MIDI
It's
is
different format.
yeah, the
It's not
MIDI
only
is
that,
just
but
note information.
yeah,
it's more
the
useful.
MIDI is the raw
Yeah.
data, not the actual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can apply it to any
Analog,
kind of
like,
instrument you want.
Make it sound
performance.
like a really bad violin.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Is that something that ActionScript library that lets you export to MIDI?
No, I wrote it, actually. It wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. You know, I mean, for someone who had never done any programming, thinking, wow, if I'm going to write a MIDI export function, I'm going to, like, go crazy. But it only ended up taking me, like, 2 days to do.
Does it keep the timing?
Yeah, roughly. It's roughly there. Like, the timing is right, but the tempo is, a little... I think it's pretty close. I just kind of eared the tempo. But the timing is very accurate. Yeah, the MIDI spec is not super complicated. There's a really good website. I don't know it on the top of my head, but there's a really good website that explains how MIDI actually works and all the different bytes and stuff. There's not a whole lot there, at least for the basic MIDI type stuff. You can get pretty complicated, but the beginning is pretty simple.
Basically, just writing text line?
Yeah, I'm basically just writing a bunch of binary or hex and converting it to binary.